Respecting other people's cultures and traditions is extremely important. I have the pleasure of working with many people from different countries, with different nationalities, different cultures, different traditions. And ironically, the more I get to learn about different cultures and traditions, the more I realize how much we all have in common. Also have realized what is the single biggest determining factor, as far as I'm concerned, which determines why we have the certain traditions in the different countries. And I'll post this at the end of this video. But it is the Chinese New Year. So Happy New Year to my Chinese friends. But it is the Chinese New Year, not the Lunar New Year. Listen to this video, and I think you'll learn two very important things. One is why it's called the Chinese New Year and not the Lunar New Year. And secondly, the importance of respecting other people's cultures and traditions. I think it is extremely important. Listen to the point he makes at the very end. I happen to agree with it 100%.
Chinese New Year is not Lunar New Year. Let me explain in a simple and factual way with two reasons. The first one is the science bit. A lunar calendar only follows the moon, and there are around 354 days in a lunar year, 11 days shorter than the solar calendar, the Gregorian calendar that we follow. If you only follow the moon, your calendar will drift through the seasons. The lunar spring will then fall in summer, autumn, and then winter. So you could be celebrating the Lunar New Year in June, for example. But that never is the case with Chinese New Year. Chinese New Year is called Spring Festival, and it always falls in late January and February. Spring Festival stays in spring. Why? Because here in China, we don't use a pure lunar calendar. We use a lunisolar calendar. It's a combination of both. The moon sets the months, the sun governs the seasons. I don't want to go too technical. I'm not an expert on it, and I don't want to bore you with the details. The key point is Chinese New Year does not only use the lunar calendar, so to call Chinese New Year Lunar New Year is simply a mistake. Remember, you could be celebrating Lunar New Year in June. Now, I am not a skeptical person, and I like to think that this mistake was a mistake of negligence. Otherwise, it goes beyond science into morality. You see, I'm a Chinese citizen, but the language I'm speaking is called English. And it would always be English no matter how many countries adopt it as an official language. Why? Because English originated from England. And that origin matters. It deserves to be recognized. It deserves to be respected. The same principle applies here. Chinese New Year originated here in China. It didn't originate from the moon, and certainly not from other Asian countries. So it should be called Chinese New Year. Now, sharing traditions is a great thing. Celebrating different cultures together is even more amazing. But renaming someone else's tradition is not. I recognize that in many Asian countries, Chinese New Year has evolved and somehow become part of their own culture. I welcome that. I think it's a wonderful thing. Just like how English has evolved and developed in America, in Australia. You know, it's become their own language. But the word English has never been taken from American English or Australian English. It never stops being called English because it's the root. And Chinese New Year has Chinese roots. And if you call it Lunar New Year, you've removed its roots and you've removed its origin. You've also removed the recognition that it deserves. So, to call Chinese New Year Lunar New Year is not only a scientific mistake, but also a form of cultural erasure. It's not cultural inclusion, it's cultural erasure. And no culture deserves that. Anyway, happy Chinese New Year.
The single biggest factor that affects traditions around the world is actually the weather. think about it. I may be going to this in a different video.